Hey gamblers! If you're like me and spend way too much time on YouTube, you've probably heard about the concept of the hardcore Nuzlocke, where people decide that they really want to turn a children's game into Dark Souls. This challenge is everywhere, and basically every Pokemon YouTuber has attempted one at some point. Some people have even brought the challenge to other games, from either RPGs to chess. Somehow. But there is one genre that I haven't really seen this challenge apply to yet. I'm of course talking about legalized gambling! I mean, gacha games. More specifically, I'm talking about Honkai Star Rail. It's a game I have an embarrassing amount of investment in, and I always want to make content around it. While I could make guides or drama posts like everyone else, I decided that instead of being hyped about the fake collab or Binon or something, like a normal person, I'm going to try to clear this game in the most masochistic way I know how. To do this though, we have to set some ground rules.
That sign can't stop me, because I can't read!
Number 1. Permadeath. You knew this was coming. This is the defining trait of a hardcore Nuzlocke and what everyone thinks of when they hear the term. It's very simple. My character is dying when they are killed. If their health bar reaches 0, I can't use them for the rest of the run. Number 2. No items. There are a ton of consumable items in the game, but unless you're an Acheron main spamming trick snacks, you probably never thought about these in your life. And I'm not about to either. These items will be banned for the duration of this challenge. Number 3. No limited 5 stars. Because this is a gacha, there is no equality and not all people are created equal. Limited 5 stars, aka these guys, are generally way stronger than the other character types, offering absurd damage, utility, or sustain that would break this challenge in half. For the duration of this challenge, I will not be allowed to use or pull for any of these characters or their associated light cones. So for anyone who loses it when someone spends their jades on standard pulls, trigger warning I guess. An addendum to this, number 4, no 5-star sustains, aka a character can provide healing, shielding, or some other shit that science didn't even know the implications of. They will be necessary to clear the challenge, but I wanted to draw the line here because even the less powerful standard 5-star sustains can easily make my team virtually immortal. This rule is mostly to ban these two, since they're the only 5-star sustains that aren't also limited. Number 5. No retreating. Unlike in Pokemon, where you're prevented from running away during trainer battles, Honkai Star Rail just lets you dip whenever you feel like. It would be a little cheap if I could just leave if a character is ever in trouble, so I'm simply gonna ban it. There will be an exception to this, however, and it is when I have to follow number 6. Keep forced trial characters alive. There will be times when the game forces me to run a trial character. I'd just not run if I could, but since they're mandatory and I can't tell them to not attack or anything, I'm just going to try to keep them alive, and if they die, I reset the fight. Number 7. No wailing. I don't feel like I have to say this, but no, I won't be spending money to make this easier, and even if I wanted to, I'm broke, and I need to save for Suritra. And finally, number 8. No alt endings. If you know, you know. Also, before you ask, yes, I wanted to turn off Space Energy Healing. No, I can't. And you know why? They fucking removed it! In 3.0! I'm not even kidding, look it up! Bruh. Absolutely insane, man. Anyway, our goal for this video will be to complete the main stories of the first 2 worlds, Paradise Space Station and Jarlo 6. This means that I will need to complete a total of 28 required missions, which sounds like a lot, and it is. Until you remember, this is Honkai Yap Rail, and a lot of that is just talking. Of these 28 missions, 13 of them have no fights period, and an additional 3 only have fights against normal enemies. Unless there's something actually interesting about these missions, I'm just going to gloss over them for the sake of brevity. With the rules out of the way, we can finally begin this challenge.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
Madam Herda is an inimitable beauty.
Also, side note, I stream this challenge, among other stuff, on Twitch, so catch me there if you want to see me do more dumb shit. Anyways. When we open up the game, we're immediately thrown into the first mission, Chaos in the Deep. Famed Austrian author Franz Kafka and her Zoomer friend Silverwolf have to get a victory royale in Fortnite in order to win a Stellaron contained within the heart of Space Station. While not being a true story-only mission, it may as well be. Kafka and Silverwolf are forced trial characters, so there's no risk of losing anyone, but even if there was, nearly all of the inputs are forced by the game. I honestly don't know if you can lose a unit here. Because of this, the victory royale is easily achieved, and as Silverwolf redeems the Stellaron from the shop, Kafka reveals why they needed it so badly. Epic Games has apparently unlocked the secret to life itself, and with this Stellaron, Kafka is able to manifest the first encounter of this run. Us. I decided to name my starter character Nuzrail because I'm creatively bankrupt, and after a cutscene where Kafka shoves the Stellaron into me without my consent, they queue up for another game, leaving me to my own devices. The mission ends once we meet two more characters, Danhong and March 7th, and the latter joins me as my reward for completing the mission. Annoyingly, I can't give March a better name, so I just accept that free will is an illusion and move on to the next mission. Eye of the Storm is mostly more tutorial stuff. Nuzlocke and March are taught about type matchups, as well as the fact that Abstract Art is apparently lethal in this universe. Midway through the mission, we also get our third encounter in Danhong, which is nice, I suppose. But it's only at the end of the mission that we have our first real fighted run, this centaur thingy. The centaur, aka Void Ranger Trampler, is honestly also not that scary, but it does give me a reason to talk about the overall strategy I will have to employ for this run. Without access to more powerful characters or higher level features, we're lacking a ton in both damage and durability. In order to avoid premature resets, we will have to follow two golden rules. First, we have to respect type advantages. Bringing scissors to a paper fight is nice, regardless of whether you're doing a stupid challenge or not, but in normal gameplay, and especially at higher levels, they tend to be more suggestions than anything. In this run though, it will be the single most important part of every major fight. Breaking an enemy's weakness not only does a hefty chunk of damage, but also delays their turn, meaning that this mechanic is pulling double duty for us. Secondly, when in doubt, play safe. One of the biggest advantages of having a 5-star sustain is that most of them are fairly low maintenance. They're often designed with a multitude of ways to reinforce your team passively, and so they're able to keep your team up with almost no skill point investment. Unfortunately, we're stuck with March, who is essentially the Temu version of a sustain. Her shield is tough, but it requires a skill point to apply, and worse, she can only shield one person at a time. But at the same time, without her shielding, we have no way to mitigate damage during fights, so we have no choice but to bite the bullet and support March's unhealthy SP addiction. With all that said, this first elite fight is obviously not that bad, given that we're still knee-deep in tutorial land. But it gives a taste of why these two rules are so important. The Trampler comes with a physical and wind weakness, which are obviously meant for the Trailblazer and Danhong to take advantage of. In addition to that though, the Trampler also comes with a unique ability. It stares at us menacingly while it charges up a super scary move. As the game points out to us, having March's shield on hand is essential to avoid taking massive damage from this move. Once the Trailblazer and Danhong get to shredding the Wayward Furry's toughness bar though, the rest of the battle is a cinch. The Trampler's second charge attack is quickly interrupted by a well-timed weakness break, and after a mysterious drone rudely steals my kill, we're done with the mission. A moment of peace is, well, a moment of peace, so I'm mostly going to skip it, but it does introduce an important mechanic of the run. Legalize gambling! I swear I'm not doing that again. To thank us for our surface and beating up random void monsters, the apparent leader of the Herta space station, Asta, gives us a single pull to reel us into an eternal gambling addiction. Well, I suppose there's nothing to do but put it in and see what happens. It could be anything. Oh my god, purple, that has to be so good, right? Oh my god, a 4-star character, and it's the one we happened to just meet 2 seconds ago? Unprecedented. Yeah, if you couldn't tell, this is a guaranteed encounter. You always get Asta here. She is good for the challenge though, so I'm not complaining. While she is primarily a support in normal gameplay with her attack and speed buffs, Asta also possesses a bounce skill, which can shred through toughness bars incredibly quickly if they're allowed to focus on one target. Against single fire weak enemies, Asta will be crucial to my continued well-being. What Asta doesn't realize though is that the Trailblazer is secretly a Nepo baby. Once we cash in our Gamma money, we come out with 2 new characters, the Lightning DPS Serval and the Fire DPS Hook. I don't actually end up using Hook in this run, just because Asta is the absolute GOAT of fire type fights in this run, but Serval will come to be extremely important for this run. Just, not now. With my crippling gambling addiction sated for the time being, we can move on to the next mission, Lingering Shadows. We're met by Miss Reference Bait, who sees us and erroneously believes that we are a functional member of society, causing her to beseech the rest of the team to get us off the station. She also joins our team as an AoE-focused fire DPS with a literal laser for an ultimate, which slightly makes up for the fact that she is our 3rd forced trial character in 4 missions. Our escape route is mostly filled with more normal enemies, but there is a puzzle section where it can show us something that's honestly not that important, but I found it funny anyways. When we come to this room, we're told that we need to head down and press this button to extend that bridge. It's mostly meant to teach cheeky players that being detected by these overworld patrols bars us from interacting with these sorts of items.
Call an ambulance! But not for me!
I'm quite annoyed at the incessant handholding this game has forced on me so far, and so I just hide in this corner, and this guy can't see me. Huh? Why does this work? Well, you see, if you look at his design, you realize that this absolute buffoon decided to cover his eyes with a helmet that has no eye holes, meaning that he's functionally blind. And even better, basically every overworld encounter shares this aesthetic taste, meaning that we can easily avoid most of the optional battles in this game. It's not actually important, like I said, there are basically no overworld patrols that are actually scary, but it makes me feel good at something, so I'm telling you about it anyways. With that aside, I'm able to get the bridge extended, and after dodging some more blind enemies, we arrive at the docking bay, where we're apparently supposed to catch a ride out. Instead of our ride though, we're met by notorious party crasher Mr. Beast, and he does seem pretty busy making his next $5 million challenge, or whatever. We're on a pretty tight schedule here, so we need to clear him out. Clearly not appreciating this interruption, Mr. Beast yells at us on video before sending us into the first boss fight of this run. Despite being positioned in the tutorial section, Mr. Beast... Okay, I can't keep doing this. The Doomsday Beast does not fuck around. His main gameplay revolves around his 2 hands, Dawn's left hand and Disaster's right hand. The difference is pretty simple. The left hand breaks a single person's neck, while the right hand breaks everyone's necks. There's also the antimatter engine at its center, which has no direct combat capabilities, but can buff one or both of his hands. All 3 components have separate health, toughness bars, and weaknesses. And once they're all destroyed, the Doomsday Beast has to lie down and use its inhaler, leaving it very vulnerable to attack. So that's cool I guess, but how do we actually beat this thing? The answer to that is, you guessed it, the golden rules. Before we even get into the fight, I make sure that I'm playing around the fastest way to break the Doomsday Beast. As you can see, all 3 parts share a common weakness, that being fire. Oh, and hey, look at that, the 4th trial character we have does fire damage in an area. It's almost like designed to fight around it. Crazy how that works. So, who are we bringing? First, I swap out Don Hong for Asta. The left hand does have a wind weakness, but I decide it's better to have a character that can contribute to all 3 components, rather than just one. Once we're in the fight, I make sure Himiko and March are always able to use your skills. Like we talked about before, keeping March's shield up will be important to keep our team alive. Any damage we take here is permanent, and we need all of the durability we can get if you want to get through this without losses. As for Himiko, like we said, we need to target down the Doomsday Beast's fire weakness. And of the characters we have, Himiko's AoE skill is the fastest way to strip the toughness of all 3 parts. This means that, to conserve skill points, I make sure to only base attack on Trailblazer and Asta. With this strategy, I managed to knock Mr. Beast down quickly enough. But unfortunately, because this is an average RPG boss, getting his HP to 0 is not the end, because he has a second phase. His core mechanics don't change, but the antimatter engine gains a unique ability. He stares at us menacingly, while he charges up a super scary move. Once he's done staring at me uncomfortably, he gets jealous of Himiko's fancy laser and steals it for his own super move, making my team irrecoverably bruised. Fortunately, like the trampler before it, the engine can be broken to interrupt the charging time. This is why I brought the Trailblazer over Danhong. Being able to break the engine and delay its super laser is much more valuable than breaking a hand. But other than that, we repeat the same thing we did for the first phase, and after another handy laser strike, we bring down the Doomsday Beast for the second and final time. Even though we defeated the Doomsday Beast, he's pretty butthurt about it, and attempts to game end us in a cutscene. Thankfully, this naked ribbon guy clearly thinks this is BS, and so he gifts us with the power of plot armor and anime logic, allowing us to resist this blatant hacking until we are saved by the Aura Farmer Welt, bringing an end to this mission. The final mission in the Herta space station is The Voyage Continues, and I would skip it since it's another mission with no combat, but it does have two things of note. The first is that we meet the actual owner of the Herta space station, Herta. Crazy how that works. And after insulting my height despite being shorter than me, she informs me that she's willing to accommodate me as a lab rat until she gets bored, after which she will literally not give a shit about my continued existence or well-being. Himiko, on the other hand, gives us a counteroffer, letting us join her and the other bozos we met on the Astral Express. And if you didn't know, this is why Rule 8 exists. Even though the game obviously wants us to go on the Astral Express so that, the rest of the story can happen, you can actually say no to Himiko and stay on the Herta space station after some haggling, and upon doing so, you get this.
After careful deliberation, you decide to decline Himiko's invitation. But those stories are no longer for you.
And yes, this is a Stanley Parable reference. Since Relate denies me the opportunity, we're going to choose the other option and join Himiko on the Astral Express, which leads me to the second thing to note. Once we actually get on, we're barraged by a ton of newly unlocked rewards and other stuff, which isn't necessary further on, but do give shiny rewards, so I take my time to go through it. The first thing I take care of is a request by Herta to test out her newly released scam, the Simulated Metaverse. The actual amount of content in the simulated universe is ginormous and way outside the scope of this challenge, but this first mission offers us some Gampa funds, as well as my very own Herta puppet, so I decided to head over and do that. Even better, we're given trial versions of ourselves in this run, meaning that there's no risk here. After easily making my way through the beta run and totally not almost having to reset, I get my promised Herta puppet, who isn't great for this challenge, but does deal an amount of ice damage, further broadening our repertoire of elements. I also do these curated tutorial levels for more Jades, which come with trial characters too, so they're not much to write home about, but doing all this gives me just enough fun to guarantee myself a 5-star pull from the starter banner. Let's see what we get. And this should be our guaranteed 5-star, so I suppose we'll see if I need to see what we get. Landau's choice? That sounds like pretty good. Okay. I see how it is. If you're wondering why I'm reacting like this, it's not because of anything related to this run, but more because I actually tried this challenge before and got Bronya there as well. If you're wondering why we're not seeing that run, we don't talk about it. With these pulls, we've gotten not just one, but two important tools for the challenge. Let's start with the shiny elephant in the room, Bronya. Everyone who plays this game is pretty well aware at this point of how good Bronya is due to her skill, which immediately advances a unit of your choosing. More actions on important characters is obviously good, but it does have a problem when you remember that the second rule means that March is permanently hogging my supply of skill points. Because of this, the more valuable pull here is actually this light cone, Landau's choice. If you've never seen this cone before, it has two effects. A small reduction in damage taken, and a taunt effect that makes it more likely for the wearer to be targeted. This doesn't seem amazing at first, until you remember that March has a secondary effect. Her shield also has a small taunt effect. When we combine these effects by having March shield herself while using this light cone, the enemy will have no choice but be catfished by her, and will almost always target her. I cannot overstate how huge this is against single target attacks. Instead of having to spread out my shields to cover my whole team against RNG enemy targeting, March can focus on keeping her own shield up, with the assurance that nearly all of the attacks will be headed her way. With all this out of the way, we can finally sit down after a long day of skipping dialogue, and get to the second world, Jarlo 6.
He won't be a boy forever. And winter is...
Winter!
Once we get there, the next mission is another non-combat one, but this time there actually isn't anything of note here, so we skip it, and move on to Travelers on a Winter Night. In this mission, we meet some guy hiding out in a random pile of snow? What the fuck? He introduces himself as some guy, and informs us that he's on the run because he has information that could lead to the arrest of the Supreme Guardian. Despite being a wanted criminal, he offers to guide us to the nearest city, but unfortunately for us, some guy is actually a government plant and leads us straight into a patrol of Silvermane guards. While the guards themselves aren't much of a threat, they did also bring along their leader, the second boss of the challenge, Gepard. Okay, hold up now. I know I just typed him up, but in this initial tussle, he's meant to be pretty manageable. Many of his scarier abilities are locked in this fight, so it's simply a matter of targeting his physical and lightning weaknesses. To do this, we bring out Gepard's own sister, Zerval, to deliver some sibling justice, as well as the Trailblazer for some moral support. A combination of the two quickly deplete Gepard's toughness and will to live, and soon we learn about the best part of this boss fight. We don't even have to kill him. Once we get him to 30% HP, Gepard shows off his mad ups to us before ending the battle. Thankfully, we are able to prove to the Silvermane guards that their world is actually round instead of flat. Stunned by this revelation, Gepard decides to give us a right to trial, and guides us to the city of Belobog to plead our case to the Supreme Guardian, bringing an end to this mission. Unfortunately, in the following non-combat mission Everwinter Night, Cocolia thinks we are deluded conspiracy theorists, and convinces her own party member Bronya to betray us, chasing us into the next mission, the aptly named You Can Run, But You Can't Hide. We find ourselves in an area overrun by fragmented monsters, and while they share the Void Monster's blindness, the tighter corridors do mean that we have to dispatch some innocent wild animals. Once we do that, we come to a closed gate, requiring us to head over to a control panel that's guarded by a lone axe guy. I head over to bully him, but before I can do that, the game stops to open my inventory and force me to use an item. Is this the end? No, don't look at the video time, I'm having a moment here. After staying true to the rule set for so long, is this the moment where I have to break them? What will the people say when they realize that this whole challenge was a lie? That I had to use an item to beat it? Was all this planning and dialogue reading for nothing? I just closed out of the game and logged back in, and that made the prompt disappear. Anyways. Even without the item, the group of normal enemies are no match against us, but the time we wasted trying to bypass the prompt allows Bronya to not only catch up to us, but set up a whole ass ambush. After boasting about her ability to read a map, Bronya informs us that she has decided to become the third boss of the run, before sending us straight into a fight with her. Compared to other bosses in this game, Bronya is somewhat more supportive. She has her generic single target attack, as well as a fancier attack that slows the person she hits. That's not super important though. What we actually need to care about are her two other abilities. The first ability, the Police Guards. This is a big problem, less because of what the guards themselves can do, but more because of what they do for Bronya. First, as long as the guards are out, Bronya says no you and locks her toughness bar. Given that her whole strategy so far relies on weakness break, that's pretty bad. The other problem though is her second ability, which advances one ally and cleanses all of their debuffs. Yep, it's the same ability that our own Bronya has, except this time we have to deal with the consequences. Great. So what are we going to do about this? It's thankfully simpler than it seems. You see, Bronya has a fire weakness, and more importantly, starts the battle completely alone. And if you've been paying attention, you'll know that we have the perfect character to take advantage of this. Asta. Normally, Bronya would be able to move before us and get her hit squad on the field before we can do anything about it, but the optional fights we did earlier allowed me to build up Asta's ultimate, which gives us just enough speed to advance my entire team ahead of Bronya. Without any weakness lock or cannon fodder to get in the way, Asta's skill tears through Bronya's toughness. It doesn't quite break it in one go though, and Bronya will get to move before Asta. So what's the solve here? This is where the second part of the plan comes in. I cause a time paradox by bringing in a Bronya from a timeline where she did not betray us. See, I told you it was simple. Bronya, as in the character not the boss, gives us access to action advance, allowing us to get a second turn on Asta. The laser barrage shreds the remaining toughness, dealing massive break damage. Bronya, as in the boss not the character, is fast enough to recover and get her guards out before it can put in too much damage, but the momentum we created by basically having her health bar before she can even defend herself means that this fight is a cinch. All I need to do is use Dan Heng and March to quickly eliminate the guards and repeat the process a second time, and victory is mine. Despite my masterful display of skill, the game decides that I am no match against Bronya, and March tries to beg Dan Heng to transform into a limited 5-star. Thankfully, he read the rules of the challenge and respectfully declines, but before I can get back to killing the imposter Bronya for good, we're suddenly gassed by secret agent Some Guy, who was sent here to correct the temporal disturbance I caused by making two Bronyas fight each other. As I pass out though, Some Guy astrally projects his knowledge of the Supreme Guardian to my mind, revealing to me the real reason Cocolia had me arrested. The poor woman is tragically suffering from undiagnosed schizophrenia, and it seems that the voices are winning. When I come to, I realize that I completed that mission, and am now in Boulder Town, the secret underground of Belobog. Unfortunately for me, what follows is a trio of missions with a combined total of 1 normal fight, so I just decide to go back to sleep until the next interesting mission, one's falling into the abyss. Here, I find myself being dragged to some mine by a girl named Seely. Seele? How the fuck do you say her name? Who claims that I agreed to help her clear out a high school clique that rivals her own wildfire clique, even though I was in bed the entire time. Despite my protests, the game tells me that I have to help her with her lunchtime drama, so I get to clearing. The enemies of the day are these automata, but the fights against them go just as smooth as any other normal fight so far, until we are met by an elite direwolf, a powerful melee specialist that can inflict bleed with its scary looking chainsaw. The Landau's Choice March is a near perfect counter to the direwolf's entirely single target damage, and taking it down is simply a matter of bringing Serval and zapping it a few times. After that, we come face to face with the leader of the rival clique, Clara, as well as her dad and principal of the school, Svarog. We learned that the dastardly Clara has beseeched her dad to use his authority to ban anyone who wasn't Clara's friend from using the sandbox, and we have to stop it. Svarog had planned for this though, and had prepared a special exam crafted just for us. Another elite enemy, an Automaton Glizzy. Despite being an elite, the Grizzly is a significant step up from the direwolf that preceded it and requires some planning. It has the standard single target hit, but in addition to that, it has 3 other abilities. The first causes it to spawn 2 auto spiders that will try to blow up on me. If they manage to detonate, I'm almost guaranteed to lose a character. To protect its progeny, the Grizzly can use its second ability, which has a chance to taunt my characters with their embarrassing internet history, forcing them to attack it instead of the spiders. Its final tool is a unique ability. It stares at us menacingly while it charges up a super scary move. This time though, the super scary move involves a whole ass belly flop, which I definitely don't appreciate. So to defeat this guy, we're obviously going to have to target his weaknesses, like every other fight. But beyond that, I also choose to bring as much AoE as I can in Serval and Herta. Their ability to hit multiple targets means that even if they get taunted, they will still be able to deal damage to the spiders. Serval has the additional boon of being able to break both the Grizzly and the spiders, and so I decided to bring along Bronya to give Serval as many opportunities as possible to use her AoE attacks. The final character we bring is March, and if you're still wondering why we are bringing her, I think you're lost. Like other bosses, the Grizzly is able to act before us, but a lucky freeze from March's ult gives me an opportunity to inflict a very early weakness break, giving me enough momentum to cut the overweight robot down before it even has a chance to belly flop onto me. Impressed by my ability to gamble, The apparent leader of Wildfire, Oleg, finally makes his appearance and decides that we're cool enough to hang out with him. When we tell him about our predicament though, Oleg informs us that information about the Stellaron is sparse, and that the only thing that might know more about its location is Svarog. You know, the principal we just pissed off. Yeah, great. Well, at least we got through the mission. The next mission is another non-combat mission, and so we move on to the past will return as an avalanche. Border Town's supply of Feastables chocolate bars is at a record low following the scuffle in the mine, and Cell wants to make a late night run to a store in the neighboring Ribbit Town to buy some more. Despite the fact that we should definitely be getting sleep in preparation for our meeting with the principal tomorrow, Bronya and I agreed to accompany Gel and head out to get the Feastables. Before we do that though, some more Gamba. No, I don't end up using any of this. Once I satisfy my crippling gambling addiction and catch up with the other two, we find ourselves in Rivet Town, where Sela reveals used to be the home of an orphanage Natasha ran before the monsters drove her to Boulder Town. Thankfully, these monsters are no less blind or weak than the ones that came before, and so they are easily avoided and or dispatched. A few minutes later, we make it to Natasha's abandoned orphanage, only to find none of the Feastables that Saul said would be here. Instead, we find a comically large Popsicle among the boxes, which we decide to smash into bits out of a fit of petty bile, sending us into a fight. You might be wondering why this guy is getting a boss intro, despite only being an elite. Other than a generic attack, this oversized Popsicle technically only has one unique ability. He stares at us menacingly while he charges up a super scary move. So what's the problem? The problem is that once he charges up and starts firing, he does not stop. Oh, and also the icicles have a chance to freeze, just as a fuck you. The one saving grace of this boss is that he has a fire weakness, meaning that the dynamic duo of Asta and Bronya can come in to save the run. Oh, and Donghong is tier 2, I guess, since the Popsicle is also weak to wind. Unlike in previous fights, I diverge from the second golden rule and fully commit to the Asta laser spam. The persistent AoE damage and freeze chance means that I have to break as fast as possible. Thankfully, my gambit pays off and I am able to break it before it ever has a chance to ruin my run. But trust me, you'll be back. With the Popsicle's banishment to the Netherrealm, the mission is mostly over at this point. Bronya crashes out when she realizes that she actually lived in this orphanage, meaning that she is by birthright part of the Wildfire clique. While she deals with the shock from this revelation, we find the evil Clara and her buddy Perkins. Clara quickly recognizes that without her dad, she stands no chance against the Trailblazer, and so she invents a sob story about how her evil dad closed the sandbox despite her protests, and how her clique needed the Feastables too despite being the ones to start the brawl in the mine. Regardless of Clara's intentions, Veliona informs us that our haul should be enough to fully resupply Boulder Town, and so we complete the mission. The next mission is won by literally just listening to two conversations, so I would skip it, but this mission has a very important reward. Upon receiving the chocolate bars from us, the local doctor Natasha is overjoyed, and rewards us with not only the usual gambling materials, but also her undying servitude to the Nuzrail cause. That's right, Natasha is our next encounter, and she may be one of the most important ones yet. The reason is that Natasha is a healer. She may be one of the oldest, most outdated, and weakest healers in the game, but the ability to have not only any amount of healing through her skill, but on-demand AoE healing through her ultimate means that we have at least something to deal with the unique abilities we've been seeing more and more of. The mission after this is to rot or to burn, aka our meeting in the principal's office. Unfortunately, despite scheduling our appointment ahead of time and even being given the password to Svarog's office, we are denied entry and have to achieve some things in order to get in. First, we need to pass 3 exams proctored by robots across the area. I aced the first 2 with answers I saw in a dream, but the proctor for the 3rd exam required some aggressive negotiations to convince. We opened the first gate with my stellar report card, but the second gate has been sealed by the dastardly Clara, and we need to convince her to reopen it for us. We find her scheming with Blue Popsicle's brother, Red Popsicle, in Rivet Town, and she sicks him on us to attempt a getaway. Unfortunately for her, the Red Popsicle pales in comparison to his blue brother. An assault by the Trailblazer and Herta quickly ends the lesser Popsicle brother, letting us confront Clara about her crimes. Ever eager to play the victim, she says that she will report our presence here to the principal, and plays dumb when we mention that we were obstructed from meeting with him under her orders. Though the failure to get around her schemes is frustrating, Dan Heng is able to come up with a potential solution. Unlike Wildfire and the Overworlders, we are transfer students, with enough wealth and influence overseas to drastically change Svarog's and Clara's calculations. The next time we meet Clara, this argument is thankfully enough to make her realize the error of her ways. Admitting defeat, she tells the guard outside Svarog's door of her decision, and lets us through to finally meet Svarog face to face. Unfortunately for us, Svarog is not exactly pleased by our flaunting of foreign riches, and the meeting quickly breaks down into violence, sending us into the 4th boss fight of the run. Damn, when did school principals get so strapped? Despite being the first boss we've faced in a while, Svarog's moveset is not all that complicated. With one exception. We'll get to it. He has a basic attack like everyone else, and he also made sure to steal one of Bronya's moves, unleashing a slightly scarier single target attack that heavily slows whoever it hits. His last ability is also pretty simple. He just casually summons the entire nuclear arsenal of the United States and sends it straight at my face. There's not even a charge up time, he just does this. Great. In the initial fight, this is all he gets, but after the first time he puts the fear of God into me with his ICBMs, our fight is interrupted by a cutscene, where Natasha and some guy pull up to provide some moral support. Taking this as an additional threat to his job security, Svarog gains access to his one somewhat complicated ability as soon as we get back to fighting, the Auxiliary Robot Arm. The arm has its own moveset separate from Svarog's, and these abilities can throw a major wrench into our plans. The arm's primary ability, Oppressive Embrace, holy shit, what the hell, straight up kidnaps one of my characters and starts suffocating them for max HP damage. Thankfully, breaking the arm's weakness will release a kidnapped character, but we can't get too comfortable. If we wait too long without destroying the arm outright, Svarog will set it to self-destruct, and after a turn, the arm will bitch slap someone for absurd damage. In much the same way as how we handle the Doomsday Beast, we will need a strategy that can keep both Svarog himself and his arm down as much as possible. To do this, I decided to go with Serval, Asta, March, and Natasha as my team. Svarog and his arm share a common weakness of lightning, and Serval's AoE skill and ult mean that she can efficiently damage both priority targets. As for Asta, Svarog has a fire weakness and starts out alone, meaning that we can repeat the same strategy we used for Bronya. Pre-farm Asta's ult, then use it early to bring our team ahead of Svarog, and then abuse her high single target toughness reduction to get an early break against him. However, because Svarog represents such a significant step up in damage over previous bosses, bringing only one sustain is a risky proposition, and I decide that I would rather be safer by bringing both March and Natasha. March's shield and Lyco mean that she can absorb Svarog's single target damage as well as the arm's kidnap ability. The second part is very important, since if Serval gets kidnapped, I have no one else who can break the arm quickly, and it's very likely I lose at least one character while trying to free her. Meanwhile, Natasha's ultimate gives us a safety blanket against the hundreds of missiles Svarog lugs around at a given moment. Thankfully, we managed to dispatch Svarog with only the tiniest bit of worrying about bad hand RNG ending my run. Furious that the principal would resort to violence to protect his livelihood, Natasha reveals that she is also strapped and attempts to murder Svarog in cold blood. Jesus Christ, woman. Before we bear witness to this though, Natasha is interrupted by a distraught Clara, who clearly never intended for her schoolyard bullying to escalate this far. She tells Svarog that she doesn't need him to show favoritism to her anymore, and more importantly for us, asks him to give us the information about the Stellaron that we need. Within his data cache, we learn some shocking truths about the story, but frankly I'm just glad I got this far without dying to hand RNG, so that is honestly not my problem. With the troubles of Svarog High resolved and the information about the Stellaron acquired, we have completed this mission, and thankfully the next mission is a free win, so we're finally done with the first half of this world's story. Oh my god.
But I bet you guys couldn't do 5 times 1,000 without pulling out. You had the calculator ready, didn't you?
Before we can continue on to the rest of the challenge, we have to deal with my least favorite part of the game. arbitrary level gating. When we attempt to proceed with the story, the game tells us that we need to beat something called Equilibrium level 1. The issue with this is that our account level has to be 20 before we can even attempt this, and once we do, we have to deal with 2 difficult fights back to back with a single team. That's great. The only good thing about this is that this isn't Genshin Impact, and I don't have to beat up some monkey people for weeks to get a single level. So I suppose I'll get the leveling part out of the way. No, I didn't lose anyone during this. Now that I spent 30 minutes of my life doing the easy part, now we are allowed to challenge the trial of the equilibrium. Except I'm lying because we aren't doing that yet, because we need to do some prep work. In the actual trial, we need to fight 2 elites back to back, and this is where the first problem comes from. We don't get conveniently placed space anchors to heal us between fights, nor are we allowed to change our team to perfectly counter each enemy. The only way for us to heal between fights is with items, which if you remember, are illegal. The second problem is the fights themselves. We have a returning face in the angry blue Popsicle, as well as a new enemy, the Searing Prowler. Let's start with the Popsicle. He has the same mechanics as the one we fought earlier, so you already know this is gonna be a pain. Worse, he comes with 2 buddies, and unlike basically every other normal enemy in the game, these guys are actually kind of annoying. They only have the classic basic hit, but this hit not only deals high damage, but also comes with a hefty slow. And given that we have this dumbass gluing my ass to the floor every turn, you can see how this can get bad very quickly. The other fight is not much easier. It has a standard sword slap, as well as an AoE attack and a unique ability. He stares at us menacingly while he charges up a super scary move. So while it doesn't have the Popsicle's constant CC, it more than makes up for it in damage. If I don't go into this without a plan, I will just straight up die. So what is the plan? First, we of course need to build our team around their weaknesses, which is a bit annoying since the bosses themselves do not share any weaknesses. Thankfully, both the Popsicle and the Red Axe guys have a wind weakness, and so I decided to take Dan Heng, since he's the only DPS character we have that will be useful in both fights. I also take Asa here. Her fire damage won't be much help against the dudes that are already on fire. But as we discussed before, the blue Popsicle is a total pain, and I'm willing to take a character that's only useful for one side if it means making sure this thing burns in hell. Even against the fire dudes though, her buffs and ultimate will still be useful. My final 2 slots go to both of my sustains, because without the ability to heal between fights, we will need all the damage mitigation we can get. Unlike the previous fights though, our preparation does not end here. Even with our optimized strategy, the elites have the damage to brute force their way through me, and if I wipe with both of my sustains, I may as well just jump off a bouncy castle because the rest of the run is basically impossible. So we need to do some housekeeping. First, we'll need a better fit. And by that, I mean better relics. Lower rarity relics can just be found lying around in chests, but the higher rarity relics are primarily acquired in Caverns of Corrosion. So why don't I just relic grind like everyone else in this game? Those are locked behind Equilibrium 1, aka the thing we have to beat in the first place. So I guess that's not an option. Another way to get higher rarity relics at this stage are to beat these encounters scattered across the world and steal their fancy chests once we're done assaulting them. The issue with this is that these fights are often difficult elite fights in and of themselves, and I'm honestly too lazy to plan for dozens of fights all with different abilities and weaknesses. So I'm not doing that. Thankfully, there is one final way to acquire higher rarity relics, and that's with capitalism! But not the real life kind, since, you know, that's illegal. In both the Herta Space Station and Jarlo 6, there are vendors that we can buy stuff from. Most of them sell like food and whatever, but rule 2 means that I'm on a diet, so that's not exactly helpful. However, there is one vendor in each world that uses special world specific currency, this for the space station and shield for Jarlo, and these are what we're interested in because they sell 4-star relics. We can only buy each piece once, but even having a couple of these higher tier relics means that we will have a much better chance. My unwise expenditures also allow me to get some rewards from one of the reward thingies I mentioned like 2 years ago, including another full set of relics. This time they're 3 stars, but the relic set also comes with a small healing bonus for Natasha, as well as a free skill point, so it's still nice. Once I get all of these relics equipped and get everything leveled up, I am finally ready to take on this stupid leveling quest. I start with the scarier Popsicle fight, and I make sure to start it with Natasha to do as much damage to the physical weak axe boys as possible. I need them out of the way quickly to relieve pressure from March, but more importantly, allow Asta to focus all her attacks on the Popsicle. The time I spend attacking them does mean that the Popsicle gets to fire one AoE attack off, but thankfully my team manages to avoid the freeze, letting me break his weakness for an easy dispatch. The Prowler fight starts out similarly, this time with March starting the fight. My streamer luck continues as I manage to freeze the Prowler alongside his buddies, giving me more time to take down the legally distinct Axe Boys. Getting them out early means that there are less burns on my team for the Prowler to exploit, cutting down his threat significantly. After that, it's a matter of whittling down the Prowler and making sure Natasha ult is ready to counter the Prowler's big attacks, and victory is assured.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really.
Wow. Ugh, so annoying.
Now that this Who guy no longer feels like gatekeeping me, we need to get moving. Bronya has returned to the surface to conduct therapy with her mother, and we need to go as well to find the Stellaron. The first mission is a free win, but the next mission, Unattainable Idol, requires us to trek through the Silvermane restricted zone to get where we need to go. We learned that the Silvermane guards have the absolute worst 4-way bridge known to man that doesn't even work, and we have to repair a nearby generator to get it up and running again. In order to do that, we need to convince Lieutenant Dunn to open the gate to it. But unfortunately we came with Serval, and because we skipped the last mission, we didn't realize until it was too late that she is terrible at Among Us. Calling out our sus behavior, but wishing to do a favor for our friend, Dunn says he will avoid calling the emergency meeting if we best him in combat. And so I do. Despite being named, Dunn is actually just a generic elite enemy, and not a particularly dangerous one at that. Other than a generic stab, a big stab, and a reinforcement ability, his main gimmick is a defensive stance. If we attack him while he's in this stance, his rock and roll spirit is insulted, and he uses a generic big stab ability as a counterattack. While this might seem scary at first, the defensive stance goes away after a turn, and he will always summon his bros before doing so, giving us an easy alternate target to go for. Dunhong can swiftly dispatch the boys, while the Trailblazer, March, and Natasha can all contribute to breaking Dunn's toughness, making for an easy kill and an easy mission clear. When we get to the next mission, Young Guard, we realize that someone else must have called the emergency meeting, because now every Silvermane on the map is hostile. Their decision to hog the sidewalk means that I can't sneak past their patrols, but thankfully they're still just normal enemies, so we're able to quickly clear to the reactor and restore power to the control panels. When we make our way back though, our path is blocked by another elite Grizzly. The dynamic duo of Serval and Bronya managed to clear it away, but not before giving me a scare by elbows one-shotting Serval with his belly flop. Barely. Jesus. There's no time to dwell on it though, because the moment we cross to the side we need to go, we will be met by a white man jump scare. Fully aware that his sister is the imposter, Gepard attempts to convince her to let the crewmates win by handing us over, but Serval is desperate to win and see the Stellaron, so we're taken into the 5th boss fight of the run. We may have already fought him before, but this time he is empowered by the greatest force of them all, sibling rivalry, and because of that, he gains access to a host of extra abilities. The first one he gains access to is a reinforcement ability. Unlike the other reinforcement abilities though, he also points accusingly at someone and claims they took his lunch money, causing all of his buddies to target the person he pointed at. The next ability he gets is another utility one, which gives all of his buddies a one-time use barrier that nullifies all damage. His final ability is the mad ups he showed off at the end of his first fight. This particularly sucks because I don't like taking damage, especially not AoE damage. Combined, this makes Gepard 2 Electric Boogaloo a significantly scarier threat, and we'll need a bit more oomph to our previous strategy to make this work. Our team is mostly the same as before, though Danhong is swapped out for Natasha to mitigate the damage Gepard's 3-point jumps do to me. Thanks to my single chatter, I was also reminded of another way to bolster my team's defenses. Despite being on a high-stakes secret mission, we can technically go back to the Astral Express at any time to redeem the love rewards this stupid rabbit can give us. and one of the rewards gives us a 3-star relic set that buffs both defense and shield strength. Not only is defense good for defense, March's shield scales off of defense and is also a shield, and so this set boosts March's overall tankiness in 3 different ways. The wonders of actually wearing armor, I guess. Also, I have enough for more gambling. Ooh, double encounter, that's kinda spicy. With this extra prep work, I feel ready enough to start the fight. Only to realize I might have been too careful and this guy is actually kind of a pushover. A lucky March freeze meant that Gepard only got a single jump off in the fight, and I really overestimated the damage it would deal. The captain and acting leader of the military of an entire planet somehow does less damage than one dinky robot. Get marked by your far cooler sister. The next mission only has normal enemies, but Gepard and Serval decide to stay behind and hold them off anyways, letting us quickly move to the next mission. The stars are cold toys. The bulk of this mission is a puzzle where we have to operate yet another poorly designed 4-way bridge to get where we need to go. There are enemies blocking these control panels we need to operate, but they're normal, and so we don't care about them. Once we complete the puzzle and ignore the obvious lore dump spots scattered across the area, we come across a big floating woman for some reason. This silly enemy, the Guardian Shadow, mostly has one gimmick, Simon Says.
1. Choose someone to be Simon. 2.
Judgment is here!
She can bitch on Reddit and get the mods to ban us from using either a basic attack or a skill. The ban doesn't actually stop us from doing whatever we want because we have a VPN, but she will get pissed and bonk us with a hammer. Our lack of bitches means that we have to respect the Simon Says, making her clear a bit slow. But at least I do so well on Simon Says that the game compliments me by calling me Chad Norris. After clearing that and ignoring more story, the game gets mad at me and forces me into a cutscene in order to show me this last ghostly image of Cocolia. This Cocolia image is also mad that I am not relishing the story and attacks me, rapidly sending us into yet another scary battle in the 6th boss fight of the run. I love fighting an elaborate schizophrenia PSA. Like every other boss, she has her normal attack, but other than that, she gets quite a few really annoying abilities. The first is a reinforcement ability, but instead of summoning guys or whatever, she throws down 2 ice pillars that deal a decent chunk of damage in an AoE. Her next ability is an icicle that has a high chance of freezing a single character. Yay, I love stuns. Her final move is a unique ability. She stares at us menacingly while she charges up a super scary move. When she's done awkwardly staring, she yells something about how winter is coming or whatever, and rains icicles on us, dealing high damage to everyone. Her sheer damage density with her abilities, freezes, and unique summons do pose a significant threat, but thankfully she has both a lightning and a fire weakness. This means that we get to bring Serval and Asta to this fight, who have both quickly become absolute champions of this run. Serval's AoE kit means that she can help target down the ice pillars, while Asta's skill can quickly shred through Cocolia's weakness and interrupt her bullshit icicle move. In our final 2 slots, we of course run Natasha and March together, because Cocolia's combination of AoE and single target damage is once again a bit too much for one of them alone. With this team assembled, I go in feeling pretty confident. A pre-charged ult on Asta allows my team to get ahead of Cocolia, but she is a tough nut to crack and Bronya is stuck being indoctrinated by the real Cocolia, so we aren't able to break her before her first turn. Thankfully, her opener is just 2 of her normal attacks, so we're able to do some damage and break her before she starts doing anything too scary. She eventually unbreaks and throws down the pillars, which are quickly dealt with by Serval ult, but one still gets a wave off and shreds through Serval's health. Thankfully, Cocolia's freeze is successfully redirected to March, allowing me to break Cocolia a second time and interrupting her charge up. But at this point, I'm really starting to feel the lack of damage from running double sustain. The damage I am able to put in is pitiful, and when she gets unbroken, she goes back on her merry way to charging her super scary move. And I have no SP left. I do what I can to prepare, making sure that I have the Tasha ult ready and saving an SP to shield Serval with March. But at this point, I can only brace for impact. And we hope. We preach. Thank you, Austin, for being durable. While the rain of popsicle sticks was devastating, my shield on Svarog had prevented any deaths, and an immediate ultimate from Natasha heals back most of the damage. With her most powerful move spent, it's just a matter of breaking her a third and final time with Asta, and finishing her off with Svarog's parting gift. Well, that was a little close. Hopefully I don't have to fight Cocolia again, right? Oh. This is the moment I've been dreading. The next mission, Roads to the Past Have Long Been Closed, is not technically the final mission, but the following missions are all non-combat, so for the sake of the runtime I'm saying that this is the final mission anyways. The first problem is immediately made obvious. When we move to the mission area, the game forces us to make one last team. The moment we go in, we will not be able to change teams or leave. Once we actually get to the team preview though, we run into another problem. The Trailblazer is mandatory. And spoiler alert, most of the enemies we face are not physical weak. With basically only 3 team slots to my name, I need to consider my options carefully. What I ultimately decide on is a team of Asta, Svarog, and Natasha. The game conveniently recommends a few types, and among them are Fire and Lightning, just like the Cocolia boss we just fought. I decided to remove March from the team and just stick to Natasha, mostly because that's something I saw in a vision, but also because a lot of these enemies are ice and freeze resistant. This won't mean that our team will be lacking in defensive tools compared to before, but at least we get to bring the GOATs Svarog and Asta again. With the dream team assembled, it's time for the final push. When we enter the mission and climb up this hill, we find Cocolia and Bronya, the latter of which is on the brink of succumbing to Stellaron-induced schizophrenia. Thankfully, our arrival cuts Cocolia's gaslighting session short, and a quick pep talk brings Bronya back to her senses. Cocolia punishes us by locking us into a cutscene, where she pulls out the Uber Popsicle of Death and uses it to awaken the Hand of Doom. Oh, and also a whole aspect alongside it. But if the Doomsday Beast taught me anything, it's that hands are the scariest part. We may not have to fight the giant robot dude head on yet, but we still have a few minions to get through before we can reach Cocolia herself. It's a 3-wave affair filled mostly with useless goons, but also included in the action order is the robot itself. The robot has one move, which is a laser thing that zaps my team in a line. It doesn't do that much damage, but it still puts us on a timer. If we take too long, we will be overwhelmed. After the first 2 waves comes another problem. Another large woman. She is a dangerous elite just like her sister, and we need to... never mind. I would explain what she does, but she has both fire and lightning as weaknesses, so Svarog and Asta shred through her in seconds. It's not even close. Once we take down the lackeys, we're thrown into another cutscene, where the robot gets his stinky laser shinned by a much bigger laser. Himiko has finally gotten off her ass on the express and has given us a hand by removing the robot's hand, giving us an opportunity to run up the length of the robot's arm in a very cool action scene. Unfortunately, we haven't been keeping up on cardio, and the rest of the gang has to spend all of their skill points to stop me from tumbling to my doom. Because of this, we're the only ones that make it to the top, and we are immediately thrown into a rematch against Cocolia, but this time, we're completely alone. You know, we are alone, but it's the same boss as last time, right? It can't be... oh shit, oh fuck. After some last minute yapping, she immediately gets to showing off her new powers. She keeps a generic basic attack, as well as her pillar ability from her OG form, but she then reveals a unique ability. She stares at us menacingly while she charges up a super scary move. Unlike before, it's single target, but it does incredible damage and has a freeze on top of it. So, how are we going to fight this super cracked boss with only Stone Nuzlocke here? We don't. The moment it seems all is lost and the Trailblazer will become the first death of the run, Cocolia mercifully sends us into a cutscene because, surprise, you're meant to lose this first encounter. Cocolia immediately violates me by shoving the super popsicle straight into my fragile body, and we go tumbling down to our inevitable doom. Instead of dying and being sent back to team preview though, we are instead sent to heaven, but it's weird and spacey. As we walk through, we pass by memories from Cocolia's life, her interactions with the characters we've become attached to like Svarog and Bronya, as well as Faceless White Dude. It's a beautiful and tragic window into events that were previously only told, which is why I'm going to skip literally all of this and go straight to the final memory, where we find some kid staring at a red popsicle. The kid, which is apparently a manifestation of the previous Guardian's wills, laments about how the West has fallen and no one believes in the preservation anymore. In response, we proclaim that because we're the protagonist, something will happen and the preservation will triumph over space cancer. The kid still insists that nothing ever happens, but lets us touch the popsicle anyways. When we do, the popsicle initially rejects us because of our past crimes against popsicle kind, but we're done stalling this story and push back with all of our pent-up rage and unshakable will to press on. I must finish this Nuzlocke. With this promise, a golden nugget smiles proudly upon us, and we wake up back in reality, newly thought popsicle in hand and ready to take on the world. With our friends smiling and cheering us on, we point our shining spear at the wicked witch, and prepare for the final showdown. Oh hey, that's the thumbnail. Even though we have our own Super Saiyan tool, Cocolia is still very much a threat, something she immediately demonstrates by half-healthing my Svarog with a single basic attack before I can do anything. Thankfully, we have our own shiny new tool in the Preservation Trailblazer. How good are they though? They're okay enough. Despite being technically a 5-star sustain and only allowed because they are a force character, their ability to protect my team is pretty bad due to their very small shield, but they do come with a taunt and deal any amount of fire damage, two features that are uniquely useful in this fight. The taunt immediately comes in handy when Cocolia tries to use her unique ability, which the game helpfully informs us can be redirected to the significantly tankier Trailblazer. This pulls pressure off the rest of my team and lets them tear into Cocolia's toughness with the same strategy we use for the not fucked up Cocolia. Once she drops down her pillars though, we're given another tool to help us on our journey. Sick of Cocolia's shit, the giant robot has turned upon this master, and now does our bidding. Upon pressing the R button, the robot will do a whole ass ground pound that Cocolia doesn't think to dodge, doing massive fire damage. Not only does this quickly remove the pillars like the game explicitly tells us, the punch also contributes to breaking Cocolia's weakness. All of this combined allows us to break through Cocolia's health bar quickly enough, but for the first time since the Doomsday Beast, killing her once is not the end, we have a second phase. Unlike the Doomsday Beast, Cocolia changes pretty significantly. First, she gains a moderate boost to speed, and can stun on all of her attacks. Yay. The second change though is that both the pillar and the unique ability are replaced with a different unique ability. Once fully charged, well, you know what comes next.
I will be the architect of a new world!
It isn't just for show though, this ability has the damage to match how hard its speed drop is. I have to make sure everyone is full health with the Trailblazer shield on top of it, and despite all that, Svarog barely survives the onslaught. I'm very much on the clock now. At this point, Cocolia is loose and nothing can stop her from lobbing endless meteors at my face. I need to get going. The first break from Nuzrail's ult does massive damage, but Cocolia's boosted speed puts in work and I barely deal any damage before she's back up to speed. She gets a potentially game-ending stun on Natasha when my team is still battered, but a clutch Acid ult lets her move before Cocolia can ruin my day. The second meteor falls, but my team stands strong with Natasha's ult, and Svarog, the hero who has cheated death time and time again, is able to deliver the killing blow against her old friend for the second and final time. So, that's it. We did it. Not only did we beat the challenge, we didn't even lose a single character. Despite how many times Svarog specifically got a hair's width away from that. It's honestly been refreshing to have to plan and think about the fights I'm taking instead of just blindly mowing through everything with broken characters. It was cool to get to use characters and strategies that I haven't thought about since the literal launch of the game, and probably would have never thought about if I didn't decide to do this challenge. For everyone that got through the whole thing, thank you so much for watching, and remember to like and subscribe so that you'll be the first to be notified when I inevitably take on the rest of this game's story. Now, if only there was a way to avoid all of the yapping. Wait, they're adding a skip button? This patch? Oh my god!